always do that.
Cool.
So anyway, so today is episode 38 of the Bearzi podcast. I have a filmmaker and podcaster, Karan Dholakia from the UK and now living in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So not too far from me. Karan is a fellow filmmaker, creative that I was interested in talking to. And the most intrigued me was hearing this journey that you had of traveling from the UK, coming into Canada 2 years ago. Yep. And I was just wondering, what was that whole journey like? And thanks for being on the pod.
No problem at all. Thank you for inviting me. I guess first of all, it's a pleasure being here. And oh geez, where do I start? So the journey, I guess. So the journey to come to Canada started in, I suppose, 2016. So my wife and I, we came out to visit. My wife's brother lives out here. And we came for kind of a little bit of a break as part of a kind of a bigger trip. And I think at the time when we came here, did I cut off? Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. When we came here, we were here for like 5 days.
Oh, now it cut off a bit.
Oh, no. How's that now?
Yeah, now it's better.
Better? Okay. Let me know if you want me to move, by the way, because I can always move to a different location if that makes life easier if I cut off again. Okay, so 2016, we came here, visited, and we saw how life was from the perspective of not just a tourist, but civilians. And so, we got to see the day-to-day life. What is it like living here? Living in a residential place and not hotels and all this kind of stuff. What was that like? And so we kind of toyed with the idea of moving to Canada, and we were like, okay, maybe let's give it a go. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. We can put the application in. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's all good. And so we started the process of the permanent residency, and we did all that. And within days, we were invited to apply for permanent residency, and we were like, "Can I swear on this, by the way?"
Yeah, whatever you want, no filter.
We were like, shit, what are we supposed to do now? Like we have to kind of do this application now, right? And so the original plan was, let's just try it out. Let's give it a couple of years. If it works, that's cool. We're all good. We can stay here, right? If not, we can come back to the UK. But funnily enough, it was never the plan to move to Canada. It was never in our books. We were always happy staying in the UK. And then when it came up, we were like, shit, should we just give it a go? I kind of always wanted to move to LA, kind of, movie capital of the world, that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I guess when Trump happened, when everything happened in the States, it just kind of changed my whole perspective on, the USA and what I wanted to do with my life and my dreams and what kind of stuff. And I've been lucky enough, my wife's been kind of very supportive with kind of everything we've been doing. So yeah, literally everything else is history. We kind of 2016 did the application. 2018 we came to Canada to do what they call a soft landing, which is you kind of come to Canada and they give you kind of a stamp on your passport that says, okay, this person is a permanent resident. And then we moved officially in 2019, in summer of 2019, and 6 months later COVID happened. So
man.
Yeah, so we had a bit of fun kind of in the meantime, but yeah, when COVID happened, it kind of destroyed everything, obviously, as we all know. So yeah,
you came at the worst time possible, dude. Of all the times of the year that you could have picked.
I know. Yeah, man. But you know what? You say that, but see, I don't mind the winter, but my wife is still figuring that out, because minus 30 is just unheard of in the UK. The coldest it gets in the UK is probably -5 to -6. And
that's
here, obviously, and here is a lot more violent than that. So, yeah.
Yeah, our weather, it's it's not the greatest. It kind of sucks. I've been here my whole life, so I'm almost become immune to the cold. I'm just so used to it. But I can see how that would be such a huge shock, coming to here coming to Canada like later in life? Because like most of my friends or family, like even parts of my family, they all immigrated into Canada, but like when they're a lot younger, right? And you're coming here, like how old are you?
34.
So you came when you're like 32,
Yeah.
31-ish?
31, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you have to like leave like your careers behind in the UK? Like obviously you have to leave your jobs, right?
Yeah. I guess we were lucky. So when we came here, I mentioned obviously my wife's brother lives out here, and he's got a family, and they've been here for a while, and so we were lucky that they let us mooch off them for a bit. So we were lucky enough to have somewhere to stay. But yeah, no, we dropped everything. We kind of left our jobs. We left everything really. We sold up, and yeah, anything at the time was our parents really. So yeah, man, we left everything. My career has been. I've got to say something about Canada. I mean, if there's anything I say, then it's been great for our careers. Like we saw an upwards trajectory, like just exponential growth here. Was as soon as we moved here, we found jobs, and we were lucky enough to kind of be in roles that we probably wouldn't have been able to get in UK, at least that quickly. So yeah, that's something that I'm hugely thankful for Canada. Yeah.
Wow, that's great to hear. Like that you came here and you instantly sort of like found success. So are you like long term? Are you just staying, or do you have any plans to go back? Like what's your future looking like?
Yeah. So we're here. We're here now. I mean, I think we've had discussions about potentially moving somewhere else, and we're not set on one place. So I think it's very much a case of let's see how it goes. But yeah, if in the interim, like we're here. Like we've just bought a house. We've I guess again that's something that we're very lucky enough and fortunate enough to have done. So I know it's often difficult for people who have been here in the country for their whole lives who can't even buy a house, and here we are just came to the country, and we're getting a house, we've got a job, and yeah, no, we're very fortunate, very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that's the housing thing is an interesting one, because obviously if you just bought a house, you saw the boom that was happening here, and the struggles and the economy. And, oh my gosh, that must have been a wild experience.
Honestly, man, it's been crazy. I think even as we see it now, it's like how are people surviving like this? It's insane. But it's funny you kind of talk about experience, and I want to kind of go back to a point if I can. When I was talking about my job, I think I'm very fortunate, and I'm not sure if you've found this with your with your careers, is like I've been lucky enough that the jobs that I've gotten have been because of my experience rather than what I've studied. The idea that I've been able to kind of find these jobs in video production or filmmaking or podcasting have become are solely as a result of because I did that as a hobby, and that is I think in this day and age, if you can show what you can do for your as a job, as your experience, as your backup, then you're winning. I think that's the biggest thing, and it's one of the few professions where you can actually do that. And I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, especially with anything creative. It's more about like the time you've put in, the experience you have, and the work you've done, rather than going to school a long time ago and studying the right thing.
Yes.
Like I feel like for creative jobs, it doesn't really apply. Like if you want to be an accountant or something, okay, sure, you have to go to college and learn accounting. Like it's pretty cut and dry.
Yes.
But when it comes to like the creative stuff, like think about social media. Like social media is still fairly new, right? This is still like a fairly new thing. And even podcasting, even though podcasting is becoming a lot more popular, but it's still seen as like something that's a backseat when it comes to mainstream television or even things like radio or satellite radio. People always think of podcasts, as a lesser form of media. Whereas now I'm like, you know what? Podcasting is going to be like the future, man. Like this long form conversation that aren't just snippets of information cut up by some television company, right? I feel like this is like the best way to communicate ideas, especially in the future, right?
But even,
or at least that's just my opinion.
No, I agree. No, do you know what? It's not just that. I think it's also a kind of there's something about a podcast where you can have we've just this is our first conversation ever, but the fact that we can have this conversation and we're getting to know each other, and we're finding something to relate to, right? We're having a conversation. There's not really any other medium that's digestible, I guess, is than a podcast. We can have this conversation for hours on end, and fine, there might be people who may not listen to it, but the fact that we can do that, and people can just kind of go about their everyday life, listen to it in the car or whatever it is, it's just two people having a conversation. And there's something that can be said about that this kind of a medium compared to like a video or whatever it is,
Yeah, and just having a conversation too, that also spills over into just speaking in regular life and being able to converse with someone. And it's not just that we're providing value or entertainment or information to other people. Me and you are also learning in real time. Like we're learning on our skills and how to converse and how to convey ideas. And it's also something that I really appreciate in terms of education. Like I am always learning new perspectives and ideas from people from all different walks of life. Like I've had people on this podcast from like Germany or like the Netherlands and some parts of the US, awesome. One guy from Australia. And it's just like you gain this interesting education through conversations from people all over the world that even for us, as creators, it's also beneficial for us. Right. So I feel like it's just a wonderful, wonderful medium right now for media that, I try to do as often as I can. I know that we were talking about earlier, like just getting a guest is like one of the most difficult things that I've overcome or not overcome, that I've gone through recently.
What is it? So that's interesting. So you've done, this is episode 38 now, right? What was it that wanted to get you to do this podcast? Like, why was it? I know you've mentioned learning and stuff like that, but what, aside from kind of learning and wanting to know more about other people or whatever, what was it that you wanted to get out of this, I guess?
Well, so what happened was I created my YouTube channel like in 2007. So for the longest time, I've always wanted to be like a YouTuber. I've always wanted to make YouTube content, but I could never figure out what to talk about or what to do because I felt like I had no skills and I had no knowledge and I wasn't an interesting person. So there was always this resistance holding me back from creating. But it wasn't until 2019 when I kind of got in the flow of just talking about things that I do on a daily basis. Things like habit change and self-improvement and morning routines. And I kind of built up that consistency of being a creative person that releases content. And then one of my friends was like, "Oh, hey, I saw your YouTube channel. It's not bad. I'd love to, start a YouTube channel one day." I'm like, "Oh, why don't you do it? Just start one." And he's like, "Oh, I'm kind of busy. I'm working on a podcast." And I was like, "Oh, you have a podcast?" He's like, "Yeah, man. Do you want to be on it?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to be on it. Like, what do we do? Do I go to your house? Like how do you do your podcast?" And he basically did it with his friend over Discord.
Oh,
so we just had like they did like, I think they did like 30-minute episodes, but my dumbass talks so much we end up going over an hour. So it was like one of their longer episodes. And then after I finished that podcast with them, I was like I closed Discord and I was like sitting in my bedroom. I was using my wife's makeup vanity as like a podcast table because I had nothing, right? I don't know what I was doing. And I was sitting there for like maybe 5 minutes in silence. And I was like, man, I want to do this long term. This was so much fun. I absolutely loved that. How do I create my own? And then that week, on that very same makeup stand, in the very same bedroom, I created my first episode of this podcast, and I titled it Just Start. And it was me just talking nonsense for like 10 minutes because I didn't have anyone to talk to and no one wanted to do it with me. And because I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I was like, what I've learned from YouTube is like just starting the creative endeavor is the most difficult thing, is like getting that ball rolling, building that momentum. So I'm like, just start, just do it. And my wife agreed to do like episode 2, I think. Like she just kind of like helped me out. And then it kind of went from there, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. And yes, I 100% agree. Like I think, like so many of us, I think in the last shit, I don't know, the last, what has it been since COVID started? A couple of years now. The last 2 years have probably been,
Mm-hmm.
I guess some of the most difficult, obviously for the obvious reasons for, for a lot of people, but, from a creative perspective, it's been so tough. It's, trying to figure out what the fuck is actually going on, and really, how it affects
Mm-hmm.
everybody, and trying to get back into that, okay, let's start creating again. Let me try and figure out what I have to do with my life, and all this other stuff has been, when I don't know if you've ever been through this, Derek, but when you kind of hit a wall, not necessarily creatively, like, you want to create all of this stuff, but mentally you're like, oh, what am I supposed to do here? It's a tough game. So yeah, man, no, I think you're 100% right, and you can see that, from your Instagram, and you can see that from your YouTube. You're consistent, and that's one thing that is so difficult to do. So credit where credit's due. Like, it's, just being able to get up and put yourself in that mindset to say, this is what I need to do, or this is not even what I need to do, this is what I want to do. And that in itself is going to help me continue to create whatever it is I want to create, or reach that goal. Or you put something on your Instagram, I can't remember what it was a couple of weeks ago or something, but it was something along the lines of, I'm completely paraphrasing, might be butchering it here, but the pleasure comes from the journey, basically, not kind of that fleeting moment where you're at the top and it's like, okay, that's it. But it's the continual kind of trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have to do. I've done it. Let's carry on. Let's keep going. That's where the excitement is. When everyone says, it's about the journey, not the destination, that is true. It's completely true, because we don't know where we're going. And there's the destination is really, to put it bluntly, is death. That's the destination. And what we do between that and now is kind of up to us, and trying to figure out how much fun we can have with the stuff that we create, and just putting good stuff out there I think is the goal.
Yeah, and that quote is, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the way I kind of thought about that idea was, I used to be someone that played a lot of video games, and I really noticed this trend that would happen, is especially with like RPG type games, where I'd be playing this game, I'd be fully immersed in the world, I'd be leveling up my character, I'd be gaining these new items or these new abilities, and then I would beat the final boss and I'd beat the game. And then all that excitement is gone. And then I realized the whole fun of the game was the character growing
100%,
and achieving the end goal of like killing the final boss, or reaching the final destination or mountain. That wasn't what's enjoyable. It's the journey. And so I was like, oh, okay, so that's interesting. And what I did was I applied that to my YouTube channel, where my YouTube channel never worked because I was always searching for creating content that would do well instead of creating content that I liked. And that was a big difference for me when I realized, why am I always thinking about my videos, like what would be good for other people? Why don't I just do what I like to do? That way the journey is fun, so I can just keep going. And so that was sort of like my aha epiphany light bulb moment that went off in my mind when I kind of thought about video games and how I really enjoyed the grind, right? Like enjoy the struggle, the build up. And so by just applying that to content creation, and just, even though it's not the best strategy, in terms of like YouTube algorithm stuff, like obviously you want to make videos that will perform well for other people. But at the same time, if you don't create content that you love, it's going to be so difficult for you to keep pushing through and keep going as a content creator, right?
This is it. And so I guess if I can ask you another question, I guess what do you know? Like so you're obviously creating stuff. What is your, I know we've talked about kind of the destination is death, so I'm not going to ask you what your destination is, but so I guess two questions. What is kind of, what is the goal? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? And I guess, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like, who is Derek?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've had two big goals in my life, and there was a very simple saying that my father told me when I was like 14 or something, like when I when I was like grade 9, I guess, when I started high school. And then he told me this very simple idea that if you find work that you love, then you'll never work a single day in your life. And through all the years, I know right now I'm 37, and that he told me that when I was 14, and that one very specific moment in time always stuck in my mind of trying to find work that I love, so I never have to work a single day in my life. And in my past, I've had a very interesting life. I've done all types of entrepreneurship type of businesses. I was like a professional poker player for 9 years.
I watched this video.
Like a wild, that was like a wild life. Oh my gosh, that was like my whole 20s. So my whole life, it's always been searching for love, searching for that passion, and never conforming to the standard 9 to 5 job. Now, that has hurt me financially for sure, because if I did finish university, I would have a degree. I probably would have got a better day job, right? Maybe I would have more money. And so that has kind of hurt me as well. But the other goal that I had this was more of like a recent goal, where I thought about like, what is the point of life? And like, what is the point of having money? Right. And a big part of life is, getting money, and people want to make money, and people want to like buy stuff and do things. Like, what do you want to do with your life? So I sat down with myself and I was like, if I could have all the money in the world, like what would I do with it? What do I want to do with it? And I realized that all I want is to buy a house where my kids can grow up. There's like a backyard they can play in. The school is close by, and I can build this YouTube studio in my basement. And that was my whole goal for money. I have a very clear goal. I don't care about going to Bali for vacation, or California, or buying a Mercedes. Like I don't care about any materialistic possessions. Even my clothes, I wear the same boring gray T-shirt every day, and my family roasts me for it. But like I have a very clear goal, like financially, where I figured out what is enough. Like what is enough for me, right? And so I did buy this house like 2 months ago, so I have achieved that financial goal, which has been super stressful. But I know, thanks, dude. It was that was tough. It took me 37 years, but I got there. Yeah. But going back to the other goal, I'm still searching for a way to turn my passion into a full-time income and just doing what I love. Now, in the past, I did work some videography jobs with Brian, Brian Francisco, the fellow content creator. And so he was I was sort of like his apprentice type of thing. He taught me a lot of stuff, and I was working like some video editing jobs. I did a couple weddings with him. I did the Ripley's Aquarium in Toronto. So I was doing a whole bunch of videography gigs, but then COVID came, and then I lost all of those. And so that was when I was forced to just put all my energy into online filmmaking and creating content online. And now I'm like, you know what? If I could, now I have the home. If I could just find a way to quit my day job and then just do this full time, just do the podcast, create YouTube videos, create Instagram reels, even do a live stream. Like I do a live stream twice a month. I'm trying to diversify the type of content I make. Now, my only goal is just trying to turn all these social media skills into just a full-time business. And that's pretty much it. If I could do that, I'd be extremely happy.
That is amazing. That is cool. I feel so this is interesting because you're slowly ticking off the things that you want to do, and I wouldn't say you're far off, man. Like, just seeing, I guess, what you've been doing so far, the consistency. You've got a house now, so you're there, man. You're almost there. Like, and this is the thing. And when you talk about kind of, what is the point of life, I 100% get it. So because I've had that conversation with myself, kind of the last year and whatever it's been, and it's trying to figure out this thing that people call happiness, and what does that even mean? Like, everyone's looking for this thing called happiness, but I don't know what happiness looks like. I think it is very much in the eye of the beholder. Like, it's, maybe we can't find happiness, but maybe we can find joy in little things, right? Maybe we can find joy in doing things like this if that makes us happy, and or creating things. And this we get so hung up on trying to find trying to find the meaning of life and what that even means, when we're wasting our time doing that when we could be doing stuff, like for us it's like stuff like this, or working towards that goal, that whether it's a small one or a big one or whatever it is. And it's funny you talked about kind of material possessions and kind of wearing the same t-shirt every day and all that kind of stuff. And it's there's beauty in that. There's I think having that's part of the consistency, isn't it? That's part of knowing and expecting what you're doing every single day. And there's nothing wrong with wearing the same t-shirt every day. I'm assuming you're washing the t-shirt, right? I like to think you're going to wash the same t-shirt every, and just the idea of minimalism, right? This idea that we don't need a lot, and it's trying to do more with less and not buying things that we don't need. And let's be honest, we do it anyway. We'll still buy things that we don't need, but as if we're not letting it weigh us down, I think that's the goal for that thing, isn't it? And I think minimalism and trying to figure things out without adding too much weight on your back, or that kind of, even on your wallet and stuff like that. I think there's so much merit in that. And yeah, it's tough, but yeah, when you figured it out, I think there's without sounding ridiculous, there's magic in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard thing to talk about, because when you say like, what is the meaning of life, or what is happiness, like what is fulfillment, these are very trite and cliche ideas that you're not really supposed to talk about, and people will just be like, what do you talk, like that's what you think about, that seems so stupid, right? But at the end of the day, when you are alone with your thoughts and you think about the type of person you are, and you think about the type of life you've lived up to this point, you and especially for me, when I turned 35, I was like, man, I'm halfway to 70, right? Like I'm halfway to 70. And then 12 years after that is the average life expectancy for a male in Canada. So like I'm getting closer to halfway to dead, right? And so I'm like, that hit me like really hard, because you're not going to think about that when you're 16 or 18 or 21. Like that's not even going to be a thought in your mind. But for me, I was like, okay, this is getting really real, really fast. And I need to think about, what do I care about, and where do these social anxieties come from, and where does all these mental health issues come from when it comes to people in our society. And a big part of that is like comparison and thinking about what do other people think of me, how do I look. And that's when I'm like, you know what, I don't care anymore about if I have cool rims in my car or if I have a name brand t-shirt. I'm like, I don't care. And as soon as I stopped caring about what other people thought of me, all of those social anxieties were gone. The only thing that maybe bothers me from time to time is like maybe my brother or my dad will shit on me, like, oh, you're wearing a gray shirt again, ha ha ha. Like it doesn't bother me, but I just find it kind of funny. But so many people are always so preoccupied with how they appear to others, how they look to others, what they're doing compared to other people. And it's such a trap to fall into mentally, because you'll never find happiness. And so for me, it was, getting really introspective and really, thinking about my life and, and what do I want to do and what will really make me happy. And unfortunately, a huge part of that is personal finance. And I know that people will be like, oh, money doesn't bring you happiness. Yeah, sure. But money can buy you freedom, which freedom can bring you happiness, because now you can just do things that you love to do and you're not slave to some corporate world. And that's what I am right now. I have a day job at a Fortune 500 corporation where I'm employee number 870,000. It's some ridiculous number. Like that's just what it is. Like my email at work is like 87 blah blah blah, like 870, like a number at the company.com. Like that's my email at work. And right. So I'm like, I'm living this stupid life of being trapped in a corporation. And I've been there for, it's going to be 10 years now. It's going to be 10 years in October. And so I also use that as a reminder of, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. So of course I needed it now, to help pay for bills and help afford the house and help afford the baby, because my wife just gave
Congratulations.
birth like literally 2 weeks ago. Thanks, dude. So lots of stuff
it's
going
huge.
on, right? And so, but it's also, again, what do you want to do with your life with the limited amount of time you have left? And that timeline, that's only if you're extremely lucky. If you avoid a car crash, if you avoid cancer, if you avoid some illness or disease, like there's so many things that can take your
Yeah.
life away in an instant, right? And so that's when I'm like, I really got to, really think about what I want to do, find out what it is, and then just go for it. And that's what I'm doing now.
That's amazing. That's, I think so. What I'd say to you as well, and I'm sure you've thought about this, and I'm sure other people have told you this, but the idea that you have, that you've been in a job for 10 years is, that's a big deal. That's it might be, I guess it's not necessarily about whether you enjoy it or not right now, but I feel like the fact that it's afforded you the ability to do the things that you're doing today, the fact that you've been able to buy a house to support your family, everything else, whatever. Yeah, the fact that you've been able to do all of this is because of that job. And I can obviously say this very confidently because, I'm very lucky in the sense that for my last maybe 3 or 4 jobs, I've been able to work in roles that allow me to use my skills as a primary thing. And it's only now when I've, reached 34, I started a new job in January. And this job is probably the closest thing that I've had to a quote unquote perfect job in probably ever. They respect your opinions. They respect the work that you produce. They give credit where credit is due. I have full creative control over the stuff that I create. And there's probably like 10,000 plus employees in the entire company. And that in itself is a big deal. But again, the jobs that I've hated in the past, I can't say that I regretted them because again, those roles have afforded me the ability to be able to get to the job I'm in today. And it's this whole thing about, we know when people talk about, regretting things, whatever, I find it hard to regret things because those things that we've done in the past, whether we've liked them or not, have brought us to where we are today, as cliche as that might have sounded. So I 100% feel you where, you might be in a role where it's probably not reflective of who you are as a person or creatively or whatever it is. I don't want to put words in your mouth, obviously. But it's tough. I know, I get it. It's tough because, yeah, being in a role that's difficult is a big deal. It's tough.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about it too? It's that I think there's an extreme amount of value in working a day job, not just for the money or the income or to please the bank for your mortgage, but also realizing what you don't want to do. I think it's very important that if you never worked a shitty job, then you won't know what that feeling is of trying to escape something. And the job that I work now, it has nothing to do. It's a complete opposite of filmmaking. I'm like a physical laborer. Like I'm a courier, right? So I'm driving trucks, lifting heavy ass boxes, and you know what I mean. So it's complete opposite of this podcast or YouTube or being a content creator or filmmaking. Like it's not even. There's no relation at all. The only benefit that I do get from it is because I'm like on the road and driving all the time. I have this extended period of time where I'm by myself and I can listen to audiobooks. So a lot of my information that I talk about on my channel, it comes from books, right? It comes from ideas that I've read, not read or listened to, ideas that I've come across, and I apply that to my life. And I remember when I started, I'm like, how do I get out of this job? So I remember I listened to like 12 different audiobooks about personal finance, right? And I remember reading, there's this one book called The Psychology of Money, which has had like the biggest impact on my life. And they had a whole chapter that was titled, I think that was the title of the chapter, but the main idea was the word enough. Like, what is enough for you financially? because especially when it comes to money and you get a new job or you get a new pay raise, there's always this inclination for your lifestyle to inflate along with your income, right? Like you make more money, so you want to buy a better car, you want to buy a bigger house, you want to buy more expensive clothes. And I really paid attention to this chapter about this word enough, where if you can find a way to not get caught up in lifestyle inflation as your income grows, and you find out how much money is enough for you, then that can bring you that form of happiness or contentment, which will set you up for your future. And so I found that very interesting. Like I never really thought about like the word enough. Like what is enough for me financially? And so that really put things into motion, where not only was I learning about how to make more money, but learning how to keep it and not throw it away, and not have my lifestyle inflate. And like I still drive a shitty car, which is fine. I don't really care. But at the same time, I've accumulated so much more knowledge now about personal finance, right? Where I'm not quite at the place where I can quit my job. Like if I were to quit my day job right now, I would like struggle. It'd be really rough, right? But I'm getting there, so I feel like just working the day job in the meantime while I work on my passion project on the side. And I have this idea where I have these like two bar graphs of my time, where like this is like day job, like 40 hours or whatever, and this is like the amount of time you put into creative work. And slowly I want to have them invert. Right. So instead of spending 40 at the day job, spend 30 and then 25 and then 20 and then spend more time into all the creative stuff. And in the beginning, it started off as a 40-20 split. Now it's a 25-35 split. So I spend like 25 hours of the day job and about 35 plus into YouTube and content creation. So it's just gradually working on, again, this whole picture of finding work that I love to do, that I can just do for the rest of my life, and just making up money that is enough. Right. And
this is the thing. So there was have you heard of Alan Watts? He was like a philosopher guy.
Yep.
Yeah, so he there's like a famous video that he had, or not a video, but like this famous talk that he had, and it was something along the lines of, if you had basically all the money in the world and whatever, everything was taken care of, whatever, what's the one thing that you would want to do? And I think that's the question I always go back to is, okay, if money is not an object, what is it that I'd want to do? What is it that I would want to do for the rest of my life if I didn't have to care about money? And I think that creates stuff. I think that is right. Write scripts, write a book or something, make films, whatever it is. Because I very, very similar to you, I don't care for material. I'm wearing a wrestling t-shirt, for God's sake. I don't it just doesn't, I don't care for stuff like you said, Mercedes, and you call it, you call it a shitty car. Bro, listen, if it gets you from point A to point B, it's not a shitty car, it gets the job done. Like it's it's perspective, isn't it? I think it's always perspective. I think if it works for the individual, then it works. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Like I'll use one of my old cameras as an example. I have an old Panasonic GH4. I've upgraded since, but the GH4 is a camera that came out in 2014. It still holds up really well today. Like it if you look at some of the videos that people make with that camera today, it's insane. Like I've upgraded to the GH5, and that again I was lucky enough to do because of some freelance work that I had. Like it doesn't matter what kind of equipment you have as long as you know how to use it, right? It doesn't, excuse me, sorry. I always, like, on Reddit, I always see people saying things like, "Oh, I want to get an A7S, or I want to get a Red camera," and all this kind of stuff. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, do you know how to use a camera generally? If you can make something with your iPhone, or you can make something with, I don't know, whatever, an old DV camera or whatever, then it doesn't make a difference. Like, why do you need to, spend thousands and thousands on camera that you may or may not use? So yeah, no, I fully agree with you, man. There's value in kind of, I guess, accepting what you have and making the most of that as well.
You know what's funny about the Panasonic? I started off with a GoPro, and then I used my phone and then I bought
Nice.
a Panasonic, and I kind of like hated it. Not really, I hated it, but like I had no
Yeah.
idea how to use a mirrorless camera, and it was
Yeah.
like so clunky. And I felt like if I just used the settings on auto
Yep.
for my GoPro
Yeah.
or my phone, it would turn out so much better than the manual settings
Yes.
on my Panasonic that I use. And it was like a $500 entry level Panasonic.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what it was called, but it was
Nice.
micro four thirds sensor, like really really cheap. It could barely shoot.
Was it like
4K.
a G7
like
or
was
something?
rough.
G something. I had a G7
yeah,
as well.
G7, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Oh, sick. Yeah.
It had the flip out screen.
That was
at
a selling
least.
point for me. Yeah.
Uh,
No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, so that like I've been down that road of gear, but I think that may be the one materialistic thing where I invest a lot of money in is gear. Like I have like a laptop, a monitor for editing, a bunch of lenses, but at the same time, it's also those are sort of like necessities for me because I know filmmaking and videography is part of my whole passion project. So even though I splurge, like a lens can be like easily $1,500 at times, it gets expensive. And so, I am not perfect by any means when it comes to spending or materialistic items, but if you have a passion for cameras that really makes you happy, then I do think there is some value in buying like a half decent camera. Maybe not an A7S3 or an A7 IV. Like that's like serious. Like especially for YouTube, I feel like an APS-C or micro four thirds sensor is more than enough. Like you don't need a full frame sensor or a RED or a medium format camera. Like you can't really tell the difference.
Well, this is the other thing as well, is like there've been full on productions like where people have just used nothing but iPhones, and now with the iPhone like 13, I don't know if you saw, like with the iPhone 13 Pro, like that cinematic mode thing, it is I don't know, like you can make some serious productions on an iPhone, and there have been productions on iPhones. I remember when 24 was on the Jack Bauer and all that. I remember they did a whole episode with nothing but 5Ds, Canon 5Ds, and for that back then when like they were using full on broadcast cameras and everything, that's a big deal. Like that was kind of one of the moments where I'm like, you don't need to have a fancy camera to do the things you need to do. If you know how to use a camera, you're all good. You're all golden. And splurging on cameras and things like that, they're investments, right? For people like us, they're investments. They're not, we're not throwing our money away or whatever it is. If we're being relatively smart about it, and admittedly sometimes we're not, it's an investment. And because, like you said, it's a passion, and it's something that brings you happiness, and that's the thing we're trying to look for, isn't it? That's the kind of thing we're trying to figure out. Okay, well, what is it that I can find in my day-to-day life that will bring me a little bit of joy? And in some cases it is that. It's trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I propel myself forward? How can I figure out what can I do to try and help myself and help my craft to go a little bit better? So yeah, no, I have to relate to that 100%. But like I think my first camera was the Canon 550D, and I think it was called T2i here or something. That for me was like, this is amazing. Like I've got a DSLR now. What am I supposed to do with this? And I made like some fun little videos and stuff like that. And then I quickly realized, I needed something a bit more because the monitor was in the camera, and like I didn't know what I was filming until I could see a monitor or something.
Oh,
it was not good. So I found myself obviously filming a lot of stuff without me in it. So man, it's a constant learning thing. And I think that's the best part about being a creator is you're always figuring things out. And I fully maintain that you're never going to be perfect at it, and you're never going to be the best at it, because there will always be someone better. And you could win a fucking Oscar tomorrow, and there's still going to be something for you to learn. Like you're not perfect, and I think that's the beauty in it, because you're always learning. So yeah, it's
Yeah, there's your quote. There's your quote for this episode.
Yeah, it's like adopting the role of,
Yes.
of the perpetual learner, right? Just always learning and challenging yourself. And the funny thing about the gear too is I usually tell this story on the pod to guests. A long time ago, over a year, near the beginning of the podcast, I had a kid. I call him a kid because he was like 20 years old. He was a recent dropout out of NYU, New York University. He had like 1,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. He had like an iPhone, I don't know, 11 or something. And, I talked to him about his decision to drop out of filmmaking school because he wanted to try to pursue YouTube or start some type of film production company. Like he's very young, right? He wasn't sure what to do, and his parents were furious with him. And all he had was an iPhone. And then 2 to 3 months later, after the episode, he has 100,000 subscribers. And he had a video that he shot on his iPhone, and he documented the whole process of making a commercial for a client with his iPhone. And he kind of just made a video about it, and it like blew up, went viral, over 100K subscribers, super successful now. And then I talked to him recently after the blow up, right? And I was like, no, it's not all about the gear, right? It was you, man. Like you're the one with the skills. Yes. You were the one with the ambitions for the film company. You were the one with the foresight to leave the university, the college degree that you saw no value in, and look what it got you, right? And I was so happy for him. And I always like reference that story of this 20-year-old kid who just followed his dreams and found success with just an iPhone camera. That's all it was. It was wild.
And that's it. And that's the perfect kind of representation of everything we're talking about here is you don't need it all. Like you can have the most minimal thing that is necessary to create something and you could be winning, and that's it. Like that's awesome. That is amazing. And some would say he's famous because of your podcast, obviously.
In my dreams. In my dreams.
Oh, geez, that's funny. Oh, good.
I know it was kind of funny because like he blew up, and then I sort of purposely didn't message him for a while, and it was because he was probably going through hundreds, if not thousands, of Instagram DMs and emails and YouTube messages, and I wanted to reach out to him and try to talk to him and offer him guidance if he needed it or support. But I was also like, what? He sort of needs to figure it out on his own. He doesn't need me at all. And I sort of waited until the explosion kind of calmed down and it plateaued a bit. And then I reached out to him and I told him like, hey man, I was a little apprehensive in messaging you because now you're like super popular. But if you would like to come back on the podcast, I'd love to talk to you. And he was like, "Oh man, I wish you messaged me earlier. Of course I'll come on anytime." There was like that gratitude because he remembers that I gave him a chance, an opportunity to tell his story when he was in nowhere, right? And he appreciated that sentiment, and so he reciprocated that by coming back on the podcast later when he's super successful now, and I'm super awesome. Like proud and happy for that guy. I can't remember what episode it was, but his name is Ryan Ng. He's been on the pod twice.
Check it out. Write that down. Awesome.
Yeah, Ryan Ng Films.
That is
super
amazing.
Super awesome content creator. Mm-hmm. You know what's funny too?
No.
Quick story before you have to go. Our mutual acquaintance Brian. He went to New York for like a Samsung event or something, and then I was watching his Instagram. The Instagram stories, right? And it was him at the Samsung event, recording a video of those guys, Colin and Samir, on stage. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And right beside Brian's story was my friend Ryan, the guy I was just talking about, and I clicked on his story, and his story was of the same two guys, Colin and Samir, but from a different angle. I'm like, you guys are at the same event?
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? And so I messaged them, right? And then I guess they look for each other. Oh, hey, you know Derek? Yeah, I know him. And it was like, and
really
they
cool.
kind of met up in person, you know, and had this like, yeah, it was so funny. I'm like, oh, that's so
Here's a question.
strange how that
this is
works
interesting, 'cause
sometimes,
this
right?
is something that I kind of, you kind of sit back and you're watching these things when, YouTubers go to events and all this kind of stuff. Do you kind of ever think, shit, I wish that was me? This is I don't think that's kind of where I am in terms of my aspirations. But when I kind of watch that stuff, I'm like, it's cool. Like they're making a name for themselves. Like they're figuring things out or whatever it is. And I don't know. I feel like it's such an interesting way of life where you can kind of get from YouTube to get invited to these huge events. It's a big deal. But do you ever what's I don't know, when you see stuff like that, what is your immediate kind of thought, like in terms of, I don't know, your trajectory? What's your when you see stuff like that?
Okay, I'll tell you a perfect story to answer your question. So in 2019, I only had a GoPro. Right? I didn't even have my camera yet, and I was like talking to Brian, and just like Brian is like my childhood friend basically, and just talking about going to the cottage and taking it in the canoe or going underwater and filming with it. And he's like, oh hey, I have a film premiering at TIFF Buffer Festival in Toronto. You want to come down and check it out. I'm like, oh, what? You have a video? It's going to be like shown there? It's like, yeah, it's going to be on a big screen. I'm like, what? Really? Yeah. We can go watch it? I'm like, how much are the tickets? Awesome. Like, oh, don't worry, I'll get you in for free, right? I'm like, oh, tickets are like $100. So I went and I saw all these like big time content creators from Toronto. There was Chris Howe was there. There was J.R. Ali.
Oh, damn.
Peter McKinnon was somewhere in the audience somewhere. That guy Daniel Schiffer was there, and then Brian had his film. And I was sitting there in the audience watching all these content creators have their short films shown, and I was like blown away. Nice. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And they had like the whole red carpet experience and like a gala ball and a meetup, and it was like this amazing event. I'm like standing there in awe. I'm like, I want to do this.
Yeah,
I want to do it. Like I want to do this. And so that is what sparked my love of filmmaking and cameras. That's when I went and bought the Panasonic, and then now I bought the Sony, and then I've wanted to submit to Buffer in 2020, but then there was COVID. In 2021 there's COVID again, and then this year in 2022 Buffer Festival in Toronto is happening again. And 2 weeks ago they had submissions open for short films and documentaries, and I use all that motivation, all that inspiration, and all that skill that I've worked on these past 3 years, and I made a short film and I submitted it to Buffer this year. Yeah, so I'm going to find out in 2 days who are selected. It's probably highly unlikely because they're only accepting
you never know, man.
3
you never know.
outside applicants, and this is and so for like the longest time I had this thing on my list where I want to apply to Buffer Festival and I want to get my short film shown on the big screen, just like all those other content creators, because that's what inspired me in 2019. And so it's sort of coming full circle now, and hopefully I'll find out on Friday. But if that's not, exciting, I'll premiere my short film on YouTube.
Yeah, so man, that's exciting. I wish you all the best. That is huge. That's amazing. Hopefully I get to see your big announcement. Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm praying. Yeah. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's still a piece that I'm very proud of that I can show to my community, my subscribers, and it's like a short film. It's only like 3 minutes, but I worked like religiously on it like the past I think 2 months. Editing was tough,
right? Yeah,
like with having like a newborn baby, it was like editing like at 4 a.m. here and there. Like that was really hard getting it done because like the deadline was really tight, but I managed to push through, and we'll see.
That's amazing.
We'll see,
no, man, I can't wait to see it either way. It's very exciting. That's good. Mm-hmm. Well,
you still have time?
I've got to go, man.
Oh, you have to go. Okay, no worries.
Yes.
So let's wrap the pod up. Tell the people listening and watching this where they can check out your work.
So I'm on Instagram at Karan D Films. So that's KARAN D and then Films FILMS. Honestly, I've been off Instagram for the last few months. It might have even been a year. I can't remember, but I've
I've returned, so I'm making my triumphant return to Instagram now. So I'm back on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. You can, I think it's youtube.com/Karan Dholakia. So my name, I think I've got one of those old legacy accounts where you could make your own YouTube URL and then they didn't take it away from you. So I think I've still got that. So yeah, youtube.com/Karan Dholakia. Failing that, just type my name into the YouTube search bar. What else am I on? I'm on Twitter, but I mainly only use that for viewing wrestling news and things like that. So, but yeah, no, that's it. That's me. I did have some podcasts, but I'm kind of planning another one on kind of mental health and minimalism, actually. So, yeah, that'll be a future thing. So yeah, that's where I am right now. YouTube and Instagram is where you can find me.
All right, I'll put all the links in the description down below on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. All right, bro. Thanks again for doing the pod.